Okie doke. Let's get started here. Let's see if I can update this. Configuring and what do I say? Provisioning and configuring open edX Hawthorn. Now with 100% more Docker. There we go. Okay. I don't even know if that shows up. Oh, yeah, it doesn't look great. Well, that was a good use of time. Let's see. Hello, Happy New Year. It's 2019. This is my first stream of the year. It is time to start playing around. So my name is Mike Bifulco. I am Director of Technology for thegymnasium.com. Once a week, roughly, when it's not the holidays and or the beginning of the year. I guess last Tuesday was New Year's, so yeah, that makes sense. I jump on Twitch and thegymnasium.com to live stream some of my job, talk about what I do, and walk you through the process of just some of the problems I face at work so that you can get an understanding of what it's like to be a software developer, designer, sufferer in the real world. If you're not familiar with it, Gymnasium is a online school where we offer free self-paced, video-based courses on a plethora of topics and subject matters spanning the gamut of web software development, user experience fundamentals, design tools, methodologies, training across a variety of topics. We've got a lot of great courses. They're all free. Ooh, how's that? Better? Let's turn this up. My gain control here. How's that? Good? Better? Great? Better? Sorry. There we go. Yeah, I may also be losing my voice. Yeah, okay. So we have a lot of really good, really free courses that are all video-based, self-paced, spanning the gamut of really cool web design, development, tools, trainings, fundamentals, you name it. You should go take some of these courses because they're free and because they're great and because we have wonderful instructors who we have scraped from their real world, real life jobs doing the things that we have them teaching you, because it's always better to learn from someone who's doing the thing they're teaching you for a living. So, with that being said, the purpose of my live stream is generally for learning. I pick out some problems and projects and things to work on that I think will be interesting and engaging, and generally try not to work on these projects ahead of time. So in other words, what you're seeing as I code is not scripted. It's nothing that I've researched and sort of set up for myself to do beforehand. It's all a learning experience so that you can see what it's like for me to learn on the job. And face the various challenges that I do, because I think it's valuable for you to see and hear the learning, the thought processes that I use to get through these problems. So today we're going to be working on configuring, setting up Open edX on their latest version, which is called Hawthorne. And configuring it, hopefully, to start to look a bit like Gymnasium. If you don't know, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of gymnasium.com, thegymnasium.com, either or, you will see powered by Open edX. Gymnasium is built on top of an open source platform called Open edX, which was built by the masterminds at MIT and Stanford, which then spun off into its own company called Open edX, or called edX, which offers the open source product. Open edX, it's a wonderfully confusing network of things that happened. Regardless to say that you can go to GitHub and find Open edX and install and set up and stand up your own environment for completely free because it is open source. And if you want to host your own school, you can do that. There traditionally has been a colossal challenge in standing up an environment for someone like me, a developer, to use Open edX to customize and use on a local instance on my computer here, for example, versus the environment that you would deploy to a production web server so that people on the internet can get to your school of whatever sort. The latest versions of Open edX are coming closer together in that sense. in that now the developer platform is built on top of Docker. Docker is a virtual machine technology. You might have heard the term containers. If you're unfamiliar with Docker, Docker is basically meant to be a self-contained, scriptable, configurable, repeatable environment where you can define not only the way that your application runs, but the infrastructure upon which it rests in a way that is not as resource intensive as a virtual machine, but also repetitive and source controllable and all kinds of great things that we didn't have before. So this will be the first time I have really set up OpenEdX on Docker. There are a couple of configuration steps to do ahead of time that hopefully will save us time, or will have saved us time. Well, this one didn't work, but one of which would have been to update Docker, which seems to be stuck on a very slow download here. It may not need to be on the most recent version. I'm just going to cancel that because I don't have all day to wait for it. So you should have Docker installed on your machine in your environment. There are different requirements if you're doing it on Unix or Windows or a Mac. I'm using a Mac, so some of the steps I do will be likely specific to set up on a Mac. Although beyond actually getting Docker installed, there shouldn't be too much difference as I understand it, because that is sort of the dream of Docker. Is that it's, to an extent, platform agnostic. Okay, so I'm going to close this tab because we probably won't need to stare at the gymnasium much from here on in. And we're going to switch over to here. This is the docs for installing, configuring, and running the OpenEdX platform on the Hawthorne release. Feel free to follow along at home if you're hanging out with me today. You can probably do this in real time with me if you have Docker installed and if you're able to access all of the administratory type things on your machine that you would need to do that. So I will say in advance, if you haven't used the OpenEdX documentation before, this is very likely to be a whirlwind of over and under documented steps. Some will be very pedantic and over-documented, and some will skip some logical steps that, if you haven't dealt with some of this stuff before, may not be obvious. I'll do my best to call out both sides of that when I see it. But generally, this is a really rocky procedure, so I would give it about a 30% chance that by the end of this live stream, we have OpenEdX running on Hawthorne, on Docker, in any capacity. I would love to be proven wrong, so let's see. Okay, so I'm just going to start leafing through the documentation as we go here. Let's see. You can install any release of the OpenEdX platform. For most situations, edX recommends that you install the most recent release. That's great. We're going to start with Hawthorne. What's included in Hawthorne? The Hawthorne release contains several new features for learners, course teams, and developers. For more information, see Open Release Notes. Well, we're going to open that in a new tab because we may refer to that. User retirement feature. This release also includes the new user retirement feature, which is a set of APIs and tooling that enables OpenEdX instances to retire registered users. There have been many changes in privacy laws. Basically, this is all around GDPR, which this erases people from OpenEdX in a way that is compliant with the GDPR standard. It opens up an API for that. So that's why that's there. What is the Hawthorne Git tag? Of course, that would be the second section in the install docs. Let's talk about this before we introduce what it is. A Git tag identifies the version of OpenEdX code that is the Hawthorne release. About 24 repositories are tagged as part of the OpenEdX release. Many other repos are installed as dependencies of those repositories. You can find the most up-to-date Git tag for the current OpenEdX release on the OpenEdX releases wiki page, which we will open in yet another tab. You seeing how this can get a little convoluted? Installing the Hawthorne release. You can install the OpenEdX Hawthorne release using either DevStack or the OpenEdX native installation instructions. I'm going to open both of those, and we're going to look at both of those right away, starting with the native installation instructions, because if I recall, native instructions talk about the server requirements, how this all should work. This is for running a production environment. We won't really address this on this session because I'm setting up a developer environment here. There's a lot of don't do it steps in here, which are great, in a section titled Bad Suggestions. Awesome. Okay. Well, at least this stuff looks to be from the last year, so that's good. Let's start. Automated installation. In theory, this is all you need to do. Okay. DevStack. So that was the first link. Oh boy, this is the releases page. Oh boy. Okay. So we want to look at. Oh my God, where am I? Installing, right. So I want to look at this page now, which is the DevStack one. So I'm going to close the native installation instructions. I'm going to open the DevStack ones. And to install DevStack, follow these steps. Oh boy, okay. Well, we're going to go down a further ass rabbit hole here. In the DevStack instructions, the very first thing says, before you install DevStack, make sure that you have met the installation prerequisites. So we're going to click on that and see what that is. Installation prerequisites. To use DevStack or Analytics DevStack successfully, you must meet the following knowledge and software requirements. Knowledge prerequisites. DevStack and Analytics DevStack require an understanding of the following items. Basic terminal usage. Check. Diagnosing and fixing failures may involve different technologies and skills. It will help to know these things. The basics of how Python web applications are built, installed, and deployed. Check. How to manage a Linux system, including supervisor. Half check. The basics of configuration management and automation using Ansible. Yeah, I have somewhat of an understanding of that. There's no way I would have felt comfortable with these three bullets if I had never touched OpenEdX before, at least from my experience coming back into this. If you're new to this, you may also feel that way, and I would say you're not wrong. And there's some room for improvement there with edX, I think, in the future. Not requiring people to have mastery of 3 or 4 other technologies to install your software is probably a plus. Maybe I'm just a DevOps cynic in that way. Software prerequisites. DevStack and Analytics DevStack require the following software. Make, which I believe is installed as a part of OS X. If not, it's easy enough to add with something like Homebrew, I would guess. And then Docker 1706 CE or later. Let's see what Docker version we have. 1806. Perfect. Nailed it. We recommend Docker Stable, but Docker Edge should work as well. You must have Docker Compose in your path. On Mac OS, installing Docker for Mac takes care of this requirement. Great. This should probably be a sub-bullet of this, but who am I to question? Allocate sufficient resources to Docker. Since a Docker-based DevStack runs many containers, you should configure Docker with a sufficient amount of resources. We find that configuring Docker for Mac with a minimum of 2 CPUs and 6 gigabytes of memory works well. For more information, see the Docker documentation. Okay, let's open that, because I don't really know how to specify how many CPUs and GBs my Dockers get. Oh, good. Good. They linked me just to docs.docker.com. Let's do this. Let's do this maybe. Get started with Docker. Container services, swarm stacks. No. Resources. Let's look for resources. Limit a container's resources. This is probably not exactly what we want. Docker provides ways to control how much memory or CPU a container can use, setting runtime configuration flags of the Docker run command. This section provides details on when you should set such limits. I don't want to know when, I want to know how. Limit a container's access to memory. Docker can enforce hard memory limits, which allow the container to use no more than a given amount of user system memory, or soft limits, which allow the container to use as much memory as it needs until certain conditions are met. I like that. Memory swappiness. Okay. So it looks like this is the way I would do it for memory. Each container's access to the host machine's CPU cycles is limited. You can set various constraints to limit a given container's access to the host machine's CPU cycles. Most users Use and configure default CFS scheduler. In Docker 1.13 and higher, you can also use the real-time scheduler. Cool. Did we ever mention what CFS means? Don't be crazy. No. Default CFS scheduler. Let's see what that is. Oh, hey, thanks, Josh. The Let's see. Oh, okay. That was easy. Two CPUs and 6 gigabytes of memory. Oh man, this is going to flatten my machine for while live streaming. It doesn't say anything about swaps, so we're going to leave that. Apply and restart. Do it. Josh, you should write documentation for a living. That was a very helpful tip, provided this is actually able to start back up. Let's see how we're doing on memory here. Not super great. I'm watching the Docker memory process climb. It's at 2.5 gigabytes. 3.2 gigabytes. 3.3 gigabytes. You can see other process CCC is shrinking. 3.4, or more than halfway there. Well, that may be all we get. Docker's running. Good. Okay. Thanks again for the tip, Josh. All right. If you're using Linux, use the Overlay 2 storage driver. We're not using Linux, so that's good. Okay. So that's the installation and software prereqs for this setup. Okay, now is the part which I am hoping will be impressively simple. I wish I had a link to when I actually don't know if I've ever done this on stream, but setting up OpenEdX before it was on Docker was like a more or less an all-day affair because of all the configuration steps, and it got better. Yeah, it's vacillated pretty massively. But anyway, let's do this. So, decide which branch you'll be working with. Master is the latest code in the repositories, changed daily. Other OpenEdX releases are more stable, for example, Hawthorn. That's what that's where we'll get to here. The named releases. We want Hawthorn. 0.2. Okay. Okay. A lot of very confusing things happen with naming here. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so we're going to use this git tag. Let me close some stuff down here because my laptop is getting pretty warm. All right, so we're going to clone. Decide which branch you'll be working with. Master is latest. Yeah. Okay, check out a local copy of the edX devstack repository from github.github. All right. Where's the best place to do this? Well, okay, so we're gonna check out this, or we're gonna clone this repo. Boy, excuse me, sorry, too much crap running here. All right, git clone. This may take a minute. There's quite a bit in here, I think. Oh no, nice. Okay. Git checkout open release / If you're not using the master branch, define an environment variable for the OpenEdX version you're using, which looks different than this. Great. So we're going to do export open edX release equals Hawthorn.2. Did I spell Hawthorn wrong everywhere? I sure did. It does not have an E at the end. Let me fix that. Hawthorn. Okay. So now if I do an echo open edX release, we should see Hawthorn.2. That's great. Run make dev.checkout to check out the correct branch in the local checkout of each service repository. Okay, in theory that worked. Not much feedback. Clone the OpenEdX service repositories. The Docker Compose file mounts a host volume for each service's executing code. The host directory defaults to a sibling of the devstack directory. For example, if you clone the edX devstack repository to workspace devstack, host volumes will be expected in workspace course discovery, e-commerce, etc. You can clone these repositories with the following command: make dev.clone. Oh, I see. Wait. Let's see. Does that work? No. Not a Git repository or any of the parent directories. .git. Very confusing. Well, it seems to be adding a new repo each time I do this, so I'm just going to keep doing this. Not confusing at all. I'm getting an error each time I run this, but it's also cloning a different repository. So let's just keep going. This one will take a while. This is edX platform, which is the big one. All right, let's see what's next. XQ. Analytics pipeline. This is not good. I don't know what these errors are about. Hopefully they're actually working. Okay. Is that everything? Looks like everything. Lovely. Alright. macOS only. Share the cloned services directories in Docker using Docker preferences file sharing. Go to Docker preferences file sharing. Add. No, we want. Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do pwd. We're going to grab this, and I think. Yeah, will that work? Yeah, these directories and their subdirectories, so I should only need to do the one. Cannot. Oh, okay, so it's already shared because that one's shared. That's a convenience. Run the provision command to configure the various services with super users for development without the auth service and tenants for multi-tenancy. Wow, there's a line that is almost entirely in Greek if you don't understand what's going on here. One more time. Run the provision command to configure the various services. So those services are all of these things that we just cloned. Of course, discovery, credentials, comment service, e-commerce, EDE tests, notes, edX platform, XQ, and analytics pipeline. So we're going to configure those services with super users. In other words, give the users probably in the parent Docker container access to the other containers for development without the auth service and tenants for multi-tenancy. You lost me here, but I think that has more to do with a production environment than my dev environment, certainly. When you run the provision command, databases for e-commerce and edX app will be dropped and recreated. So this is not something you should run after you start adding courses and things, or you will lose all your work. Make dev provision. So what this is doing is setting up a bunch of Docker containers, presumably. Adding a bunch of root accounts to each of those containers, it looks like. Sleeping for 20 seconds. When in Rome. Why did I say no to sleeping? Okay. Testing a connection. Adding a bunch of users. Loading a database. This is actually looking pretty good so far. God damn it, I spoke too soon. Okay, what does that say? Downloaded newer image for memcached. Pulling devpy. Manifest for edX ops devpy Hawthorne.2 not found. Well, there's an error I don't know what to do with. That's the tag. Presumably there's an edX. Let's check this out. There's presumably an edX subrepo called devpy. Nope. So no, it was called edX ops. Ops? Okay. Let's just go ahead and search for that. Great. Okay. Well, I know this is one of those signs of insanity things that's chalked up to Gerald Ford or whoever that quote is misattributed to. Let's try it again. I'm just going to run everything again and see what happens. Bye. Okay. That didn't work. Let's just try. Let's just operate as if this worked and see what happens. No. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't be using that named release. Maybe I misspelled it? Let's try that. Hawthorne.2. Sure looks the same to me. Man, this is frustrating. I feel like we're very close. Let's see if there's a... No, of course not. Oh yeah, okay, so edX ops is the name of the OpenEdX root whatever on Docker Hub, which is where Docker containers are stored. So we can go in here and look for edX ops. What was the first one to fail? DevPy. And then see the named releases in here. Okay, so Hawthorne.2 just doesn't exist. despite the documentation saying it is. So we're just going to switch to Hawthorne.master then and go back through some of these steps. Okay, let's do it again. We cloned it, we CD'd it, we're going to check out. We're just going to do that. And we're going to do that. And we're going to do that. Seems to be working better already. Okay. Okay, this is already working better. What a frustratingly weird sign. Make dev.clone should clone all of those Docker Hub containers. I just want to grab that echo command to make sure actually. Yeah, okay. We did this. Well, let's try make dev.provision. This is where we were failing before. This is one of those things where this install process is so fragile, and it seems like it doesn't get done from scratch often at edX. So people run into these problems, and unless you can sift your way through it on your own, you are essentially dead in the water, or on your own to go find the person with the answer here. Cloning new Docker containers. I'd imagine this would all be faster if I wasn't also streaming at the same time. I don't really have a fiber connection or something like that that makes this super easy on my machine. Some pretty hefty downloads too. This is almost a gig. Oh, look, it worked. Okay. So what this should be doing is starting a bunch of little services on different containers that work together and running them sort of daemonized in the background. Well, I guess it's still configuring them. Uh-oh. Looks like it's installing a bunch of NPM packages. That's cool. And as we're going, we're seeing all these vulnerabilities that are coming from packages that are used here of various threat levels. It's fine. Ooh, there's quite a few. Not a surprise, really, but... to be honest, it's cool that we see them at all. Could sing a sea shanty, yeah, keeping with the whale theme. Ask and ye shall. Oh, yeah, I don't know any sea shanties. Boy, it's been a while since I've played my guitar at all. Come on. I should be busting out my digital music production stuff, which I don't own. Wow, this is a very long install process. I gotta imagine it would be much faster if I wasn't hogging up all the other RAM on my machine with Chrome and live streaming, but it's taken a long time. Somehow this is ending up being my least interesting stream of all time. Who knew? Oh. Oh my god. It's coming back. All right, let's see. Docker Compose. Oh, it looks like it's just starting to run. Nope. Post install stuff. Paver stuff. Pip freeze. That's a good sign. Using pip version 9, however, 18.1 is available. Well, no edX app sudo, edX platform settings override, migrate LMS, traceback, Python path. That's a new command to me. You wonder what we're migrating the LMS from if nothing was running before. Maybe that's just a first time run. loads of migrations. Only about 50 of them, maybe 100 there. So these are all changes to the database structure in some way. Since when, I'm not sure. Well, I guess this is edX master, not a named release, so probably since Hawthorn first was tagged or something like that. Yikes. Purgatory. Oop, oop. We're doing more migrations, okay. My God. Strange that migrations are done in alphabetical order. I guess this is just a categorization of migrations on each table or data type. Here we go again. Now we're making progress. This all looks somewhat familiar. These tend to happen the first time you provision OpenEdX on the old world, which was Vagrant. So these are like configuration steps from the Ansible library. Boy, if I'm lucky, just at about 3 o'clock we'll get OpenEdX up and running. This is an insane amount of time for this to take. I've never done this on stream before, so it's likely due to the live stream software, which takes quite a bit of my process power. But I am still handcuffed. Can't really do anything while I'm waiting for this to happen. tell you what, there better be a hunk of cheese at the end of this maze. There's so much crap to do here. Ooh, Webpack. Looks like we're almost done. LMS SAS is compiled. CMS SAS is compiled. This is insane. This is like 25 minutes of waiting. Okay, that looks like the command that would run devstack. Could this be the last step? much longer I'm going to want to wait on stream for this thing to be done. I might just call it a day here and let this thing spin off on its own, because this is exhausting. I don't know what it's doing. Yeah. Okay. I think it may be time. We'll talk more about this, I guess, next week on stream. Yeah. Until then, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram, yeah, or on Twitch. I guess you can find me on Instagram if you want. That's fun. And God, yeah, I'll be back next week. We'll pick this up. We'll start customizing it and configuring it more, and hopefully we'll be in a place where we can actually do some useful work as opposed to just wait for the damn thing to provision. Anyway, happy Tuesday. We'll catch you guys in a week. Take care.